heavy is not going to make you bulky, rather lifting heavy is going to make you stronger. And I'm going to break down exactly how these different variables are going to work when you are writing a program. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be debunking the myth that lifting heavy weights will make you bulky. But before I start, you guys know the drill. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, ding ding ding. And if you don't want to watch the entire video, I will be including timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead to the section that you want. Now, onto the topic at hand. The myth that lifting heavy weights will make you bulky has been something that I've been hearing ever since I first got into the fitness industry. I've been doing this professionally for over 16 years now, and when I first started in the industry, I was working in these big box commercial gyms. And for those of you that have never been a member of one of these big box gyms, the way it works is when you sign up, they are going to schedule an appointment and sit you down in front of somebody like me. And the purpose of that assessment is to basically sell you on personal training, but during that assessment, what happens is you go through goal setting and what exactly you want to accomplish while you are at the gym. Whenever I would have somebody in front of me, particularly this was with women, whenever I would ask them what their goal was, if they ever told me that their goal was to lose weight, which is what most of them would say, I would always ask them what they had done in the past to try to lose weight and what they are currently doing to try to lose weight. And if they didn't say that they were either lifting weights in the past or that they are currently lifting weights, then I would recommend to them that the best way for them to lose weight would be to incorporate some form of strength training. And every time I said that, I would get the same response. 80 to 90% of the women that sat in front of me would say, oh, I don't want to do weight training because I'm going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, or oh, I don't want to do weight training because it's going to make me bulky. And that simply isn't the case. Not only is it not the case, but it's also incredibly insulting and downplays the amount of hard work and effort that goes in to actually getting bulky. Trust me, if it was that easy to get bulky just lifting heavy weights, then I would be bulky by now, but I am not. As you can see, I'm actually quite small, so there's more to getting bulky than just lifting weight. And what this comes down to is a lot of people have a misconception of what exactly is meant by heavy. I'm going to use an example of this one girl back about 15 years ago when I was working in these big box gyms. One of the sales representatives at the first gym that I ever worked at, we had a conversation and I was telling her that it would be wise for her to incorporate some type of strength training because she told me she was trying to lose weight and she just was not seeing results. And when I told her that incorporating strength training would help her to achieve her goal, she told me that she didn't want to lift weights because in the past, when she had lifted heavy weights, she would get bulky and she didn't like that look. So when I asked her what exactly did she mean by heavy, she said that it felt heavy. And a lot of people, when you hear the word heavy, you interpret that as my perception of lifting something heavy. If you pick up something and it feels heavy to you, that is not what we mean by heavy in terms of weight training and program design. Heavy refers to intensity. Intensity refers to percentage of your 1 repetition maximum. If I ask you, are you lifting heavy? I am asking you, how high of an intensity are you training of your 1 repetition maximum? For me, heavy is 85 or more percent of your 1 repetition maximum. If you are lifting below 85%, that's more of a moderate weight. Even though it may feel heavy to you when you are lifting a moderate weight, in terms of intensity, it is not a high intensity. So when I asked her exactly what she was doing, she didn't know exactly how heavy she was lifting. So I asked her how many repetitions she was lifting, and she said that she was doing 3 sets of 12 repetitions. And that is why she was putting on more muscle than she wanted to, because when you are doing that type of training, that falls in line with hypertrophy. But if you are doing 3 sets of 12, that's not heavy lifting. That is a moderate amount of weight that you are lifting because, again, heavy refers to intensity. It may feel heavy to you, but that is not what we mean when we ask how heavy are you lifting. We are talking about intensity. Now, depending on the intensity that you are training, this is going to dictate the response that you are going to get from your body because every single intensity zone is going to have a different response. Some of them will make you stronger, some of them will make you bigger, some will give you more endurance, and it really depends on what exactly your goal is. So with regard to lifting heavy is not going to make you bulky, rather lifting heavy is going to make you stronger. And I'm going to break down exactly how these different variables are going to work when you are writing a program. If you are training, there's different types of phases that you will go through. I'm not going to go through all of them because I've already done that in other videos, but the 4 main phases that most people are going to incorporate into their training program is going to be relative strength, absolute strength, hypertrophy, and strength endurance. These are going to be the four most common when you do your training programs, and each one is going to elicit a different response. So if you don't want to get bulky, you need to make sure that you're training in the proper zone. Now, in terms of each different phase, each phase is going to have a different intensity zone. If you are training for relative strength, that is going to be optimized anywhere from 85 to 100 or more % of your 1 repetition maximum. If you are training for absolute strength is going to be best achieved anywhere from 79 to 84% of your 1 repetition maximum. Next, we have hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is best going to be achieved anywhere from 70 to 78% of your 1 repetition maximum. And then finally, we have strength endurance, which will best be achieved anywhere from 30 to 69% of your 1 repetition maximum. So, depending on whether your goal is to get stronger, get bigger, have a combination of strength and size, or to build your endurance, those are the different loading parameters that you would want to follow. So if you are training in a hypertrophy zone, which is what you do if you want to get bigger, that is not heavy lifting. That is a moderate amount of weight, because 70 to 78%, while it may feel heavy to you and you may perceive that to be heavy, it's not heavy in terms of intensity. Now, in terms of these 4 different phases, what exactly can you expect to achieve from each one of these phases? Well, if you are training for relative strength, you are going to get stronger without necessarily putting on size. And one of the reasons that you're going to get stronger without putting on size is because when you are training for relative strength, you are training at such low repetitions that you are not going to accumulate enough time under tension from these sets that you are doing to elicit a hypertrophy response. It is still possible to build muscle while doing relative strength training, but you would have to incorporate a lot more volume to be able to hit the amount of time under tension that you need to elicit that hypertrophy response. Next, we get into absolute strength. With absolute strength, the goal of this is to both get stronger and put on size. With absolute strength, you are going to get stronger, but you're not going to get quite as strong as you would have had you done a relative strength training phase. And you're going to put on some muscle, but you're not going to put on quite as much muscle as you would have had you had done a hypertrophy training phase. Next, we have hypertrophy. You are going to put on muscle in hypertrophy. This is the typical bodybuilding training zone. This is where most bodybuilders train, because when you are training for hypertrophy, you are going to build muscle, but you're not necessarily going to get stronger. So if your goal is to not get bulky, then you don't want to be spending too much time training for hypertrophy. You would want to spend more time training for relative strength and also strength endurance, which brings us to strength endurance. Strength endurance is going to be a combination of fat loss and also improving your muscular endurance. So if it is your goal to improve your endurance or improve the amount of fat that you are losing, then you would want to do something like a strength endurance training phase. So what exactly should you do if you don't want to get bulky? Well, most of the time, as I stated, you want to be alternating between strength, relative strength, and strength endurance. You would still want to incorporate some absolute strength and some hypertrophy every now and then, but you wouldn't want the bulk of your training programs to be in those zones. You would want the majority to be in the strength endurance and in the relative strength zones. Now, what about repetition range? Well, depending on which one of these different phases you are in, that is going to dictate how many repetitions you are lifting. For relative strength is going to be best optimized between 1 to 5 repetitions. For absolute strength, that is going to be best achieved between 6 to 8 repetitions. For hypertrophy, anywhere from 9 to 12 repetitions is going to be ideal. And then finally, strength endurance is going to be 13 or more repetitions in each exercise. Now, how many sets for each of these different loading parameters? Well, this is also going to be dependent on which type of training you are doing. For relative strength, that is going to be anywhere from 6 to 12 sets. That's going to be optimal. For absolute strength, that is going to be anywhere from 5 to 10 sets. For hypertrophy, this is going to be 4 to 8 sets. And strength endurance is going to be anywhere from 3 to 6 sets. Just a quick side note, these are all general guidelines. Once you get more familiar with program design and some more advanced concepts, you can manipulate these in different ways and you can gain strength on high repetitions and you can burn fat on low repetitions. These are just general guidelines, but if you're brand new to program design, stick to these general guidelines because you will see results from these guidelines. Okay, on to the next part. Next, aside from the number of sets and number of repetitions, there's also different rest periods depending on your training goal. If it is your goal to achieve as much strength as possible, then for relative strength, you should be resting anywhere from 180 to 300 seconds in between each set. The reason you are going to need such a long rest period, 3 to 5 minutes, is because when you are training for relative strength, you are going to need a lot of time to recover in order for your body to be able to properly do the next set. If you don't rest long enough, you are going to be too weak from the set that you have previously done, and you won't have enough time to recover from that previous set. So, if you are training for relative strength, 3 to 5 minutes rest is what you should be doing in between sets. Next, we have absolute strength. For absolute strength, you should be resting anywhere from 120 to 180 seconds. That's 2 to 3 minutes. For absolute strength, because the intensity isn't quite as high as relative strength, you don't need to rest quite as long because you will recover a little bit quicker, but you still need to give yourself enough time to recover. That way you'll be able to perform the next set properly. Next, we have hypertrophy. This is the bulky muscle gaining zone. When it comes to hypertrophy, anywhere from 90 seconds to 120 seconds is going to be optimal. You can still achieve hypertrophy resting longer or shorter, but this is going to be the best range for the average person who is just going to the gym. 90 to 120 seconds is what you should be resting in between sets. When it comes to hypertrophy, you don't want your body to fully recover from every set because ideally you would want to fatigue your muscles as much as possible because the more time under tension you can accumulate and the less rest periods that you have, the better it's going to be at eliciting a hypertrophy response. And then lastly, we have strength endurance. For strength endurance, because it is your main objective to burn fat and also to improve your endurance, we want to have shorter rest periods. And the rest periods for this one are going to be anywhere from 10 seconds to 90 seconds. If you are a beginner for all of these different loading parameters, you want to stick to the higher end of the repetition brackets. For the sets, you would want to stick to the lower. So let's say you are a beginner who is training for relative strength. You are going to do, if 6 to 12 sets is recommended, then for a beginner you would want to be closer to that 6 set range. If you are an expert, let's say you are a professional elite level athlete, you could get closer to that 12 set range. Next, how many repetitions? It's going to be 1 to 5. Well, if you're a beginner training for relative strength, you would want to be closer to that 5 repetition range because if you go for something like a 1 repetition maximum and you are a beginner, the chances that you injure yourself are going to be much higher. So you won't want to do that type of training right off the bat. You would want to reserve the 1 to 3 repetition range for when you're more intermediate and advanced. Next, when it comes to the rest periods, 180 to 300 seconds, because you are brand new and you're not going to be as strong as you would have when you get a little bit stronger from doing these types of training sessions, when you first start out, you can get away with less rest periods. So if 180 to 300 is recommended, as a beginner, you would want to rest 180 seconds because as a beginner, since your strength level isn't quite as high, then you won't need as much time to recover. Whereas once you do get to a level where you are a lot stronger, the stronger you get, the more time you're going to need to recover because as you get stronger, you will be lifting heavier weights, your muscles are going to be bigger, and because you are going to be lifting heavier weights, you are going to require a lot more time to rest, and the bigger your muscles are, you're also going to need more time to rest because the bigger the muscles, the more oxygen they are going to need to recover. Aside from not training with the proper loading parameters, another reason why people tend to think that they're going to get bulky or that they do get bulky is because they are not training properly in terms of the exercises they are doing. A lot of people tend to place an overemphasis on isolation exercises and not enough on compound exercises. At the end of the day, weight loss is going to come down to calories in versus calories out. There's absolutely no way around that. If you are in a caloric deficit, you are going to lose weight. If you are in a caloric surplus, you are going to gain weight. And if the amount of calories that you take in is equal to that of your total daily energy expenditure, then your weight is going to stay the exact same. So, because we know that we have to be in a caloric deficit to lose weight, ideally, you would want to focus your exercise on more compound movements as opposed to isolation because when you do compound movements, you are recruiting larger muscle groups and you are going to be burning more calories. If you burn more calories throughout your workout, it's going to make it easier to become in a calorie deficit. And if you are in a caloric deficit, you will see weight loss results. So if you are doing a lot of training and you're doing a lot of isolation work, you are going to be spending a lot more time in the gym and you're not going to be getting the same benefit because you could do 10 isolation exercises to get the benefits of one compound exercise. For example, let's take the barbell back squat. If you do a barbell back squat, you're basically training everything in your body. You have to use your core to stabilize yourself to stand up. You have to use your glutes, your hamstrings, your quads, your calves. Whereas, let's say you do isolation exercises instead of that. Well, in order to hit all the same muscle groups, you would have to do abs, you would have to do your lower back exercises, you would have to do different glute exercises, you would have to do hamstring curls, knee extensions, calf raises. You would have to do a lot more exercises to hit the same amount of muscle groups that you can do from just that one exercise. So you can do a barbell back squat and get the same results as doing 10 different exercises. So by doing compound lifts, you are not only burning more calories, but you are going to minimize the amount of time that you spend in the gym. And if you're someone that doesn't want to spend too much time in the gym, then the most effective and efficient exercises are going to be compound exercises. Now, even though compound exercises are going to be more effective and efficient, you should still do the exercises that you find enjoyable. If doing something like a barbell back squat or a deadlift or bench pressing, chin-ups, all those types of exercises, if you find that those exercises are not enjoyable for you and they are going to cause you to quit the gym because you just don't want to work out and do those exercises, then you don't have to do those exercises. You can do isolation exercises and still get good results from that. You can do your bicep curls, tricep extensions, hamstring curls, all that stuff, because even though they won't be as effective and efficient as a lot of these compound exercises, an isolation exercise that you actually do is much better than a compound exercise that you don't do. So if you'd rather stay on the couch and watch TV because you don't want to do squats, but going to the gym to do bicep curls and hamstring curls is going to motivate you to go to the gym, then do those exercises. No, they won't be the most effective and efficient, but if it gets you to the gym, do that, and eventually maybe you can incorporate some compound lifts and find some compound lifts that you enjoy. Now, one final thing I would like to touch on, aside from exercise and the different loading parameters, is going to be the nutrition, because at the end of the day, nutrition is going to play a huge role in your results in the gym. Because even if you are training for hypertrophy, which is going to be the bulky training zone, you're not necessarily going to get bulky doing that if you're not eating properly. So nutrition is going to play a huge role in the results that you get. Now, when it comes to nutrition, there's absolutely no way around this point. If you are trying to tone up, you need to be in a caloric deficit, because calories, while they're not everything, they do matter. And if you are in a caloric surplus, you're going to gain weight. If you are in a caloric deficit, you will lose weight. If the amount of calories that you take in is equal to that of your total daily energy expenditure, then your weight is going to stay the same. But one thing with regard to calories in versus calories out is, if you are in a caloric surplus, your body is generally going to be in a more anabolic state. And when your body is more anabolic, that is more muscle building. Whereas when you are in a caloric deficit, your body is going to be in a more catabolic state, which is more muscle wasting. So if you are training in that hypertrophy zone, you want to make sure that you're not in a calorie surplus if it is not your goal to get bulky, because when you are in a level of caloric surplus, your level of muscle protein synthesis is going to exceed that level of your muscle protein breakdown. And when muscle protein synthesis exceeds muscle protein breakdown, that is when you build muscle. Whereas when you are in a caloric deficit, the level of muscle protein breakdown is going to exceed that of your muscle protein synthesis. So when muscle protein synthesis exceeds muscle protein breakdown, that is when you burn fat and you also lose a little bit of muscle. You can still be in a caloric deficit and put on muscle, but this is not for this video. I've already covered that in another video. If you want to watch that, I'll include a link right over here. I ended up making that video a few weeks ago. It was another one of my Fitness Myths Debunked videos, and it was the you can't build muscle and burn fat at the same time. So I'll put that in the cards, that way you can watch it if you are more interested in that. But for the purposes of this video, just know that if you are trying to burn fat and you don't want to get bulky, then you need to make sure that you're in a caloric deficit, because when you are in a caloric deficit, it's going to be a lot harder to build muscle if you're not consuming an adequate amount of protein. That pretty much covers it for the nutrition side. I just want to quickly recap the different loading parameters for the zones that you want to be training in. If it is your goal to lose fat and you don't want to get bulky, then ideally you want to alternate most of your training programs between relative strength and strength endurance. If you're brand new to the gym, you would want to start out with strength endurance and build up some strength before you go to relative strength, because if you train too heavy right off the bat, you're going to increase your chance of injury. Again, these different things, relative strength is going to be 85 to 100 or more percent of your one repetition maximum, so 85 to 100% intensity. For strength endurance, it's going to be anywhere from 30 to 69%. In terms of the sets, for relative strength, it's going to be 6 to 12 sets. For strength endurance, it's going to be 3 to 6 sets. For the repetition range, relative strength is going to be 1 to 5 repetitions. Strength endurance is going to be 13 or more repetitions. And for the rest periods, you are going to rest anywhere from 180 to 300 seconds. That's 3 to 5 minutes for relative strength. For strength endurance, you are going to rest anywhere from 10 to 90 seconds. And one thing that I haven't covered, I'm going to quickly just mention it right now. In terms of the time under tension, if you are training for relative strength, your time under tension for each set should be anywhere from 0 to 20 seconds. For strength endurance, it should be 70 seconds or more. That means every single set, the amount of time that you are lifting the weight, let's say you are doing a squat. If you are doing a squat and you are doing 5 repetitions at a 4-0-1-0 tempo, that's going to be 25 seconds long, which is going to put you just over that 0 to 20 seconds. So you want to make sure that you're following the proper guidelines in terms of time under tension as well. So if you are doing a barbell back squat and you want to make sure that you're in that relative strength training zone, you would want to minimize the amount of time that you spend on each single repetition. So instead of a 4-0-1-0 tempo for 5 reps, if you were to do a 3-0-1-0 tempo, 4 seconds times 5 repetitions is going to be 20 seconds. So if you do 5 repetitions at a 3-0-1-0 tempo, you're going to be right in that sweet spot of 0 to 20 seconds. That pretty much covers it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.